quote comes from the one and only Will Rogers, who said this: "The only difference between death and taxes is that death doesn't get worse every time Congress meets." I love that. Will Rogers, he had a lot of those good, funny lines like that. That's got to be one of the best, though. I love it.
It is. And while we may laugh at that, those of us planning for retirement, well, that's a stark reality. Taxes have a way of creeping up on us, whether they come via new laws or new regulations or changing tax brackets. All of that can eat away at our hard-earned savings if we are not prepared. And unlike death, which only happens once, taxes, unfortunately, are a lifelong expense that can and often do keep increasing, right? So what's the solution? Well, the key to actually enjoying retirement and not just surviving it is proactive planning. We need to structure our income in order that we minimize taxes, leverage tax advantage accounts, and then stay ahead of any legislative changes that could impact our nest egg. Because the last thing that we want to do is spend our golden years worrying about what Congress will do instead of enjoying the financial freedom that we have worked so hard for. Think about it this way. Taxes do not stay the same, right? Laws change, brackets shift, and new policies can take a much bigger bite out of your retirement income each and every single time Congress meets. So if you do not have a plan, you can end up paying far more taxes than are necessary. Money that should be funding your lifestyle, your travels, your time with your family. And that's why smart investing and smart retirement planning is not just about saving. It's about protecting what you have saved. Strategies, like I mentioned, tax efficient withdrawals, Roth conversions, and using tax advantaged accounts can make a huge difference in how much of that hard-earned money you actually get to keep. The goal? Well, that's simple. Control your tax burden so that you can enjoy your retirement and not stress about how much of it is going to Uncle Sam. But let's be honest, death may be inevitable, but high taxes in retirement? Well, with the right planning, that doesn't have to be the case, Matt.
Yeah, that's totally preventable there. You can actually plan in a way that will reduce your tax burden because, Uncle Sam, I love Uncle Sam. I love my country, but Uncle Sam's not the best retirement partner in the world. So
no.
you want to minimize his impact on your retirement as far as your taxes go, as much as humanly possible. And, speaking of that, Mike, it's just about tax time here. It's getting down to the wire. If you haven't filed your taxes, it's coming up on April 15th. That deadline, it's really just around the corner now. And, Mike, we've got it's of course everyone's favorite time of the year, but we've got some topics here to talk about as far as what people can do while taxes are on their mind, as far as some retirement tax strategies for tax season. And one of the very first here is really important when you're talking about year-to-year taxes and filing your taxes each and every year with the IRS. And that is to consult with a tax professional because they'll be the ones to help you navigate kind of the here and now and making sure you get all the right deductions and that sort of thing as far as, this year's taxes go, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Especially if you have a complex financial situation or you're unsure maybe about certain tax matters, you should consider seeking advice from a licensed tax professional because they can make sure that you are taking advantage of all of the deductions and credits while you're still staying compliant with tax laws. And I know a lot of people try TurboTax. Heck, I tried TurboTax and did it for several years until it just got a little bit too complex for me to handle. And now I am so grateful that I pay a person every month to take care of my taxes so that I don't have to meet with the IRS because of an audit, right? These things are protected. And then you want to make sure that you file your taxes on time. Filing by the deadline is prudent. That's April 15th this year. And if you do happen to be somebody who needs more time, you can file for an extension but that extension only extends the time to file. So if you owe taxes, you still have to have that tax paid by April 15th.
Yeah, and that, which is always kind of a wake up call to people like, oh, wait a minute, I still have to pay even though I don't file. Yeah, you do. That's the deadline to pay is April 15th, regardless of whether or not you file or you file for that extension. And, Mike, when we're talking about future taxes now, you mentioned planning for different types of accounts, or you planning using different types of accounts because they're taxed in different ways. Well, there are actually two completely tax-free investments that are available as well. And I know that you love help folks kind of navigate those and see how they could possibly work into their own retirement plan.
Yeah, so the first one is going to shock a lot of people, and it's actually life insurance, right? You can do some pretty advanced life insurance planning to be able to set up tax-free loans against the death benefit that you never have to repay. It's just offset when you pass away by the money that you leave behind. So there, again, are some really advanced strategies with life insurance that might be the right move for you. It's not right for everybody, but it is right for a lot, right? The other one is the Roth IRA. Well, why are Roths important? Well, because you're paying tax on the seed and not on the harvest, right? You pay tax one time at a known rate so that in the future, that money grows tax-free forever, okay? And then whenever you pull it back out, that tax has already been paid, so you don't have to worry about that. And if you pass away, then that money also passes tax-free to your heirs. So a lot of people think that municipal bonds are a good way to go, but they're not necessarily tax-free and are sometimes subject to both federal, state, and local taxes. And believe it or not, folks, those can also impact Medicare costs if you're a high income earner. So, when we talk about tax efficient planning, you want to make sure that you have the right tools in your toolbox.
Absolutely. And if you, have the wrong tools in your toolbox, if you're not sure what tools you need, don't use a hammer to try to do a job that you need a wrench for, kind of a thing. Go to moneymatterswithmike.com. He's the tool man. It's almost like Tim the Toolman Taylor here or something. But Mike Zaino is the tool man. He can make sure you got the right tools to go inside that toolbox. Moneymatterswithmike.com. He can help you out with all of that. The consultation, by the way, is free of any cost and any obligation. You can also give him a call, 704-560-1573. That's 704-560-1573. Of course, Mike, we all pay taxes on via payroll taxes to Social Security. And that is always a big topic, of course, these days when we're looking at, of course, a lot of changes in the federal government, kind of slashing and burning going on as far as government agencies and things like that. And people are like, okay, what is the impact going to be on Social Security? It's a big topic, but also a big topic every single year when the calendar turns is a cost of living adjustment. And there is that cost of living adjustment coming up, of course, for 2026. They say it could be a historic one, but not necessarily in the best way for retirees.
Yeah, for most retirees, Social Security income isn't something they can make do without. And based on 23 years of annual surveys from the Gallup poll, between 80 and 90% of retirees rely on Social Security to cover at least some portion of their expenses. And so that just underscores why the annual cost of living adjustment is so important. All right. That fabled COLA that you're always hearing about is the tool that Social Security used to help account for the effects of inflation, which basically means the rising cost of living over time. And because that income is so vital to the financial well-being of our nation's retired workforce, perhaps it's no surprise that many pay attention to the annual cost of living adjustment reveal from the SSA during that second week of each October.
Yeah, absolutely right. And, this kind of shocked me too, just the numbers here that we're going to talk about. In February of this year, more than 52 million retired worker beneficiaries took home a Social Security check. That average check was just over $1,980, so $1,980 in some sense. And that means that any cost of living adjustment of 1% or greater next year would make history by lifting the average monthly benefit above $2,000 a month there, Mike.
Following the release of that February inflation report from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, nonpartisan senior advocacy group, the Senior Citizens League, adjusted its 2026 COLA forecast to 2.2%. So based on the analysis released, the buying power of a Social Security dollar has decreased by 20% for retirees, and that's just since 2010. So that erosion in buying power, guess what, folks? Unfortunately, it is likely to continue in 2026, both with Medicare, medical costs, as well as housing costs, the inflation that those two particular areas have experienced is way higher than the projected cost of living adjustment.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it does. We often ask the question, does the cost of living adjustment actually keep up with the cost of living and the increase in that? And a lot of times the answer to that question is unfortunately not. And, the other reason just a little bit higher Social Security check isn't necessarily good news for retirees is the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund is forecast to just kind of go broke. It will exhaust its asset reserves, in other words, by 2033, they say. That's according to Social Security Administration itself. And the OASI, that's the Old Age Survivors Insurance Trust Fund, OASI is responsible for dishing out those payments to retired workers and survivor beneficiaries each and every month. So there's more cause for concern there.
Yeah, no. And then if ongoing demographic shifts coupled with inaction from the lawmakers on Capitol Hill eventually deplete those asset reserves in just 8 years from now, well, the Social Security Board of Trustees estimates that sweeping benefit cuts of up to 21% may be needed just to sustain payouts. So the long story short, the higher the cost of living adjustment, potentially the greater likelihood of expediting the timeline to possibly sweeping benefit cuts. So that's not great news for retirees and beneficiaries, recipients rather, of those Social Security benefits.
Yeah. And this will be a good time also to mention here, Mike, go back and listen to last week's show if you can, because we talked about there why it's so important to have a backup plan for Social Security and what you can do, right? The things that are possible for you to do to have a backup plan for Social Security. It's really super important to make sure that, as Mike often says, you want Social Security to be the cherry on top of your retirement plan, not the entire ice cream sundae, right? So go to moneymatterswithmike.com, if you will, and reach out, because Mike's standing by wanting to help you out. Just go to moneymatterswithmike.com and reach out via the contact page and set up that initial consultation.
Yeah, and while ice cream sundaes are good, but I can tell you, creating a personal pension that you can never outlive, that's a whole lot more tasty.
There you go. It's a whole lot less, fattening to the old waistline there too. I'm sure about that. I can attest to that myself. But and there's the thing is, what you love to do each and every day, Mike, is just that, help people sort of navigate challenges that can really kind of wreck their retirement if they're not addressed in the proper way.